what people really need to mostly remember on this is it really depends. If I'm the vendor that's seeking out to do a signing, who am I talking to? Am I talking to the correct person? And most importantly, the lesson I tell a lot of people is the person you're talking to speaking specifically and directly to the app or celebrity that you're trying to get a business relationship with. That's the most important thing.
Welcome to Beyond the Game podcast. I'm Justin. I'm your host today. We'd like to give a special shout out to our sponsor for the show, Dazzle Sports Marketing, the premier sports memorabilia and autograph custom frame shop here in Central PA. Today's episode of Beyond the Game, we're going to have a business owner, local business owner, and sports memorabilia vintage dealer extraordinaire, Darren Backhaus. Friend of mine I've known for about 10, 12 years here, owner of Best Authentics. Thank you for coming on the show and doing this so graciously for me.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
And why don't you tell us a little about yourself and Best Authentics, your company?
Okay. I've been in Central PA here for a little over 20 years. I moved up here in 2000 and worked for a sports marketing company where we did sports memorabilia marketing over television, similar to Shop at Home, QVC, things like that. So did that for about worked for a company, did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then just started back on my own, kind of what I was already doing before I moved up here when I lived in right outside of Houston. And just been growing the business for the last 16, 17 years. And we have an office and warehouse here in Camp Hill. Do not have a retail store, but we are kind of big position as like an internet retailer for sports collectibles, memorabilia, things like that. So we just kind of got done doing a reboot and a relaunch on our website.
Yep.
So a lot of stuff on the website. Then we sell on different platforms, different websites. You'll see us, on Amazon, eBay, and then Fanatics web platforms and a lot of different websites that they have we sell on. So that's kind of been our shtick here lately is the last 10 years really heavy internet retailing.
Well, that's one of the reasons I had you on is you're having this big relaunch with your website.
Right.
What website do you currently have?
It's bestauthentics.com.
Okay.
And we have probably right in the neighborhood of about 20,000 different items on there.
Different SKUs.
Yep.
Yeah, I was on there last night searching around. He has everything for every sport, every collector. He has some non-autographed items. He has framed up jerseys, photos, and he has entertainment, memorabilia. You have music, celebrity stuff. Probably one of the leading companies in vintage. You're known for your vintage.
We do a lot of vintage sports, and we dabble in entertainment like vintage music, some of that stuff. But our core concentration is sports. But we'll do a little bit of everything, especially when it comes to vintage. It's and that's more of an opportunity. What's available, when I can buy it, how I can buy it, different things like that. It's not as cookie cutter as doing a autograph signing. Like we actually just did a signing yesterday with Saquon Barkley. That's probably just this year, our fourth signing we've done with him. Yeah. And that's what I would call more of your new, fan type of inventory. We do a lot of that. So obviously there's a big
market for that.
Big demand for fan type stuff, autographed jerseys, photos, helmets, different things like that. And then the vintage stuff is a little more based on how and when the stuff becomes available. So.
Correct. So, Darren, I wanted to bring you on Best Authentics. You guys have been in the industry for many years. Obviously, they still sell on their eBay, their website, Amazon. You're through Fanatics. Mm-hmm. You give me a little rundown of like vintage. How do you go about getting and purchasing this? Because you're well known in this. The people come to you.
My background basically is I started doing this in high school. Basically anybody that's been in the business as long as I have, everybody started with trading cards, baseball cards, football cards, things like that. The memorabilia part of it going back, let's say 30 plus years, was kind of in its infancy. If you went to a trade show or a collector show, there may be, let's say there's 100 dealers set up or 200 dealers. maybe 5%, if that, probably not even that, would be selling vintage or memorabilia type items. The concentration is definitely trading cards, which is still obviously the backbone of the collectible industry, hobby, whatever. It's not really a hobby. It's a big industry. But the trading cards, if you've seen all the latest deals with Topps and Panini and Fanatics buying these companies, it's a $1 billion industry. The memorabilia part of it has become much larger in the last 15 to 20 years, probably really more 15 years. So this stuff was out there before, but it might have not been mass marketed like it is, where there's maybe more players involved, more vendors involved in it. But as far as acquiring it, it's really it's not something where, okay, we want to do a Joe Montana signing. So you can go get in touch with the people who you need to do a Joe Montana signing. As long as you are willing to pay his fee, you could literally do a Joe Montana signing once every 2 weeks, once a month, however often he's available and wants to do it. And with the vintage stuff, it's more or less like, okay, well, you kind of do have to know where to look for it. It's not, could you just wait for somebody to call you and said, hey, I got this collection, my father passed away, and yeah, you could wait for that, but I'm usually a little more aggressive and not, seeking this stuff out. So a lot of it is different contacts I've made in the industry in the last 30 years that say, hey, we got this stuff that came in. We don't deal in it as much. Is this something you'd be interested in? So it's word of mouth. There's a lot of it. And then there's different companies that specialize in like maybe a specific sports collectible, sports memorabilia auction house is where I source a lot too. And that's like, it's either a game used item or it's, a signed vintage autograph out of a scrapbook, an old signed photo, an old program, different things like that, where maybe it's not as available to the mass public, but more or less knowing where to look and doing it for years, you just develop different contacts like that.
Yeah. So beyond the game podcast, when I started the podcast, it was to have athletes, business owners, people in the industry. We'd come at it from a different approach. Back in the day, you would do an interview with a newspaper or with a news crew, and it was the same old quick questions and stuff. We want to delve a little bit deeper and learn a little bit more about it. What would you say? You were doing it in high school and you got in the cards and stuff like that. First, you're from Houston, you referenced, right?
Originally, yep.
Okay.
Houston, yep.
And what would you say the most valuable item? Do you have any personal items in your collection, things that you collect personally?
I have a little bit. My personal collection has kind of been whittled down to original, what they kind of call type 1 photos and sports photography, which just interested me. And some pieces from that, but that's, I would say, a small part of what I've bought and sold. It's something I do like personally.
But personal,
yeah, just have it, in my, my basement at the house and hang it up so it can be displayed.
So what's the most? It doesn't have to be most valuable, but what means the most? What's your top two pieces
of all time? Probably as far as like an outstanding piece or a wow piece. Most of that stuff I bought and sold that stuff. So I kind of go back to my roots of growing up. I'd say some of the Nolan Ryan items I've had where I've had game use.
But what's the ones you have currently that mean most to you?
Probably some of the Babe Ruth photos and different things like that.
You kept them?
That I kept that are not signed, but they're just original photographs.
Right.
So
can you tell us one or two of them?
Yeah, one's like a 1915 shot of him with the Red Sox, like real super young shot of him, where it's a Charles Conlon photo, and it's got him kind of like before one of the games. Somebody called him, it was a posed photo, but it's just a super cool shot of him because most of the stuff you see of Ruth is from the early 20s, mid 20s, of course the 27 Yankees, things like that, and even into the 30s when the photos were maybe more available or, more widely produced. This is a rare shot from him in a Red Sox uniform. And I'm not a Red Sox fan or anything like that, but it's just super cool shot of a really young Babe Ruth.
Okay.
So,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, on the other spectrum of you've sold millions and millions of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars, What's the most expensive item you've sold?
There's some trading cards I sold. This was going back probably over 20 years ago, well over 20 years ago. That might have been 25 to 35,000, like maybe some Michael Jordan cards, things like that. Probably most recently, some of the Babe Ruth autographs, which I brought one today, but like a Babe Ruth autograph baseball, maybe anywhere from between 80 to 100,000. There's been some rare Super Bowl tickets I've had that I've sold, different things like that. But probably, multiple things over 50,000.
Yeah.
Nothing in the millions, but it's anywhere from between 50 to 100,000.
A lot of solid hits, though.
For sure.
I was explaining one of my rarest times I did get fortunate to broker a deal. It wasn't my item, but I sold it as a Babe Ruth ball. So I did one of those once. I've actually done two. But what would you say? Give me a wild story. You've done a lot of signings. I know there's definitely a distinction between the vintage they can't sign anymore or not.
Of course.
Those items. Now we're in the era where we do a lot of signings, bring out a lot of items, get a lot of it done, and it's as fast as possible. So it's not as good of auto. The penmanship has definitely changed.
Usually the rule of thumb is the younger the athlete is or non-retired athlete, usually that's going to be a more fast signature in a hurry, things like that. Even you go back to now, we've done stuff with some of the college kids, like at Penn State, especially this last year, we've done stuff with Drew Allard, Tyler Warren, guys like that. It's a lot of they don't even learn cursive in school. So a lot of them, until they've done one or two signings, they don't really even have a quote unquote regular signature. Like where I remember, it's going back a couple of years, but Nick Singleton, the running back for Penn State, he was really, as we were doing a signing with him, and before the signing, he was practicing his signature because it was almost like a lot of times you see maybe a kid in sophomore in college might still print their name, or they don't. They just don't really sign it. They don't sign paperwork as much. Things like that.
No, exactly.
Everything's so electronic. So a lot of it is pretty eye-opening when you see things like that. But we generally in a calendar year, we probably participate in well over 150 to 200 signings. Now, we're not necessarily at every signing, but like the Saquon Barkley one yesterday, we were there, and then that's somewhat local. But if somebody's doing something in California and we're buying a part of the signing, we're not necessarily
going to it
super present. But then we have, of course, authentication companies, everything there that authenticates everything as a witness signature on the spot. So that's generally how we do a lot of the signings nowadays.
So give me I know some of these answers, so that they'll be funny me asking them to you, but I want you to do it for the user that doesn't, the viewer. So, one, explain to us your charity auctions. You do you're like the leading guy in this area. Tell us your service area. Is it Pennsylvania? Are you nationally? And how if they were doing holding a charity event, a golf event, or a gala, how you can help them.
That came about going back probably 12 years now. We just, somebody reached out to us that knew we did memorabilia and things like that and said, hey, we have a gala in Hershey. Is there anything you guys could help us with? And we, along with that, about the same time, we also were participating or starting to participate in the United Cerebral Palsy auction that they do on City Island every year with the Senators in conjunction. So kind of a couple of them came about there, and we said, let's give this a shot. And it's basically a turnkey system we present to. We work with a lot of different nonprofits locally, and that's how somebody in the greater Harrisburg area, Hershey area, would know who we are. Is they've maybe been to a golf outing, they maybe been to a gala at a hotel, and it's a silent auction type thing where back when we started, and still today, it's somebody has a bid sheet out there. They put a bid on. A lot of it now is electronically. People have the auction on their phone, so it's a Catholic school gala. Maybe the auction's on their phone and they bid right on their phone. So that's kind of where that's progressed to. But we probably do in the neighborhood of about 300 events a year, and most within about a 2.5 hour driving distance of Harrisburg. Some we do out of state, but that gets into a lot of shipping and things like that. And we do a lot of framed items. So we do that, but our general rule of thumb is between 2 and 2.5 hours of Harrisburg. So that can hit a lot of large metropolitan areas, but it's basically a total no-risk consignment where we give the charity a list, they pick from a list, and it's consigned. So whatever they put out for sale, whatever doesn't sell comes back to us. They start the bidding a percentage above what the consignment price is, and the consignment price skews much closer to wholesale than it would retail. And maybe they have their gift baskets, they have their restaurant gift certificates, and then they add the sports memorabilia as part of the auction. And it's worked very well where we've had some customers now, nonprofits, for first year they started, they use us every year. So some are going on 12, 13 years. We've done the same event where it's like a black tie gala, it's a golf outing, different things like that. So chances are if you've been at an event in our area here, you've most likely seen our stuff there, whether it's framed up, whether it's a helmet, different things like that. And most of that stuff, we would not really do vintage items. It's going to be your fan-related items, because somebody coming to an event is not necessarily a collector, but they may be a fan of the team. So like for this year, like for instance, we're starting to get our events going this year, and a lot of people want Penn State stuff. Obviously, they want Eagles stuff. And the teams that are local that are winning, and even the Steelers, even though they've been a little skiddier lately, but people want the teams that are in the news, Ravens, different things like that. So we really skew our list, where we kind of form our list, I would say, to the local team. So if somebody gets a list, they're not getting Seattle Seahawks items on there. They're getting a list to pick from of
the stuff
of people that would be relevant in this area. Fans.
Makes sense.
Yep.
So again, plug in that website, bestauthentics.com. You can check out there. They have a portal on there. They have a part talks about the charity auction. If you have a nonprofit or a charity, a cause that you're raising funds for, there you go. There's another option for you. You can also check out his vintage stuff, but also his modern era items. We're going to go into some stuff that you brought here, but I wanted just some more off the wall questions here.
Okay.
Is there any fun, crazy, wild stories of a signing that you could tell us about and tell us the player?
There's some signings that probably the most recent one I can think of is when we were, and you got to remember how some of these things are done. It's not when people say something. Here's what I would say: something negative about a player, or something negative about this person was supposed to be here at this time and supposed to sign X amount of autographs and supposed to get X amount of money. What people really need to mostly remember on this is it really depends. If I'm the vendor that's seeking out to do a signing, who am I talking to? Am I talking to the correct person? And most importantly, the lesson I tell a lot of people is the person you're talking to speaking specifically and directly to the athlete or celebrity that you're trying to get a business relationship with. That's the most important thing. So, for instance, we just this is not a crazy one, but we just did something with the thing that's changed with all the college and the NIL. We kind of dabble in the college stuff. Obviously, we have a very we're in close proximity to Penn State, so that makes sense for us to do product. We just did something with the tight end Tyler Warren, and the first signing we did with him, he didn't really have a representative agent. The second signing, he did. So it's kind of like that's an unusual thing but that's the world we're in with college now. Is most of these players that have any kind of potential to go to the NFL or anything like that already have an agent by the time at least by the time their freshman year is over, but most of them have something before they even get into college. But we did something with this is going back years, a quarterback that was drafted by the Cleveland Browns, Johnny Manziel, got to the signing, set everything up at the hotel, ready to go for the signing, and he basically never showed up. Now, that being said, we were talking to somebody. We don't know 100% if this person was in Johnny Manziel's ear that day of the signing or the day before, but long or the short, we ended up never doing the signing. So we just
I have a funny story.
At least it was in Cleveland and it wasn't in Los Angeles.
Right. Well, we went to Cleveland and did Johnny Manziel the first year when he was drafted, and we were dealing with a cousin.
Right.
And it was one night, yes, he's going to do it.
Yep.
We're going to be on it. And then he came to the hotel and they were like, he doesn't want to do the signing tonight, right now, but you're welcome to go out with us to party.
Right.
He wants to go drink and party.
Sure.
So we went out. We won't name what gentleman's club we went to and partied. And I saw one of the largest times I've ever been with an athlete. And I've been with quite a few at gentleman clubs. He threw more money than I've ever seen at one instance.
Right.
We partied until very, very late. And then, or early. And we went back to the hotel at the Marriott, and he went in, and about an hour later, his cousin says he's going to be getting ready for, I guess he had to go do the team function. You got 1 hour. He'll do it in his room.
Right.
And so we had to pivot real quick, and that's where we did these. We did a bunch of posters with him, Texas A&M and all those posters, and some of his Cleveland helmets. Wild time with Johnny Manziel. Paid him cash because he blew the money that night before.
Probably the casino.
Right.
Right.
Who's the hardest player you've had to work with that you're willing to name? I'll give you a heads up. Another guest already sit there and on the previous episode said Bo Jackson.
yeah, I can see that. We just recently did Bo Jackson. I wasn't there, but somebody from our company was there, and he was engaging enough, but not overly cooperative. I'm going to go to the Wayback Machine, and probably I would say Joe DiMaggio, which that's probably circa, I'm trying to think of the year, it was probably 91 or 92, and he was just kind of the type that this was definitely the infancy of a lot of these guys doing mass autograph signings, and he would do them, but he would limit X amount of baseballs you could do, X amount of bats. He normally wouldn't even do
bats. Yeah.
But,
well, rumor is he did 1,000 bats for some dealer for $1 million or something, or whatever.
Probably, yeah. I mean,
and he would never sign bats.
There's all kinds of stories like that, but this was kind of back when, obviously, before the internet, but it really started. A lot of that started getting big when these guys would do mass signings for QVC and Shop at Home, because they could go on a weeknight, and famous stories about Pete Rose showing up, like Shop at Home, and they'd sell 1,800 Pete Rose autographs in one night, which, if you really think back before the internet, that was really one of the only ways you could mass market it, where you could sell 1,800 Pete Rose autographs to 1,800 different people, not selling 1,000 autographs to a dealer who would then go in turn and resell them. Because back in the early 90s, again, this is going back to, there weren't dealers that were doing or they weren't doing large amounts of autographs. There wasn't a dealer saying, I need 500 of these, because the television marketing kind of hit a spot there where they were able to sell. Now, most of these shows are on like after 11 p.m., so whatever they ran during the day was their quote-unquote normal programming, and then it would lead into, hey, at night we need some filler. They don't want to sell their makeup or their purses at night because those people aren't watching QVC or Shop at Home at 1 a.m. So they put the sports in kind of more or less probably as an experiment or a filler, and it ended up taking off. So there would be times when, like, Nolan Ryan was still playing, let's say in the early 90s. Well, they may sell, again, because he's in the news, they may sell 1,200 autographs in a night. Or Frank Thomas, who was like a hot rookie, in the early 90s, and they may sell 1,300 Frank Thomas because he's in the news. And it was giving people an access to go buy this autograph where they would have never been exposed to it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of one of the things that kind of, I would say, started a lot of the, again, modern memorabilia, where guys could do autograph signings and people would retail their autographs.
Well, the internet changed this.
Of course,
you went from your mom and pop stores to being digital and being online.
Right. That's the way a lot of people ask us. I say, well, we don't have a retail store. We have a large office and warehouse, but you can find everything on our website. But we're not operational, set up to run a retail store. We have basically too many items and not enough showroom space that we would and wouldn't have necessarily interest in staffing and things like that. So that's why people say,
good old staffing.
Yeah, I say kind of internet retailing is where our strong suit is.
Let's look at some of these items that you brought with us. Tell us the item and like approximate retail value.
Okay, first one.
That's a clean Babe Ruth right there.
Very clean Babe Ruth. The biggest thing on this is it's a single sign ball, which is a premium for a Babe Ruth autograph. We do sell a lot of Babe Ruth autographs. Probably in an average year, probably 10 to 20, depending, what we get in and different things like that.
10 to 20 a year?
10 to 20 Babe Ruth autographs a year. I mean, maybe our most is we sold 25, but that's a lot because you have to buy it and sell it.
Yeah.
So this is a single sign Ruth, and it's a sweet spot autograph, which is a big deal. It's not on it's not on a side panel.
I was going to say, what is a sweet spot?
Sweet spot is like, that's the area everybody wants the ball signed. Yep. So this is as far as the qualities, as far as what somebody's looking for in a Babe Ruth autograph. This is a super bold autograph. Still shows this was signed in, probably mid to late 30s. It's signed in a fountain pen, but it still presents with very high quality. So
it's in great condition
on an official ball.
Not a lot of toning.
That's another thing, yeah. And it's slightly toned, but it's what they call like an evenly toned. So it's got the same kind of off-color white across the whole ball. There's not spots on the ball that are toned. So this is the nicest Babe Ruth we have in stock right now. Like a lot of times when we sell a Babe Ruth ball, it's for maybe a person's not even necessarily a serious memorabilia collector, but hey, maybe they have this watch they like. Maybe they already have the car they like. Maybe they have a painting they like. And this is something, hey, I've always wanted a Babe Ruth ball. It's kind of an iconic item that you wouldn't necessarily have to be a serious collector
to want it. Yeah.
So, like you talk about the Sandlot, we were talking about that before we came on. The whole movie's about a Babe Ruth ball that went over the fence and everything like that, and they played baseball with. So people all know what this is. So this isn't like I could say, hey, here's a Lefty Grove ball that, like a obscure kind of Hall of Famer.
Right.
Everybody knows who Babe Ruth is. You don't have to know anything about baseball. So we sell a lot of lesser condition Babe Ruth balls that somebody just wants to put in a collection and say, I have a Babe Ruth signed ball.
This is for the high-end collector.
This would be more of an investment or high-end collector ball. This probably retails right now, I'd say, depending between – and the thing with memorabilia, it's very subjective. A lot of this is based on eye appeal and how it looks. So there's not really, quote, a price guide per se. Like with trading cards and PSA graded cards and different things, this sells in this range. So this probably is going to, retail between $70,000 to $90,000 is what the retail price would be. So if somebody was looking to buy one, could you get it? Yes, you could. There's probably some wiggle room there.
Yeah, but the condition and the quality of this, because I mean, this is one of the cleaner ones I've ever seen you.
And especially being on an official ball, that's a big thing. No signature removals, which means nobody else signed it. There's it's a higher end ball that a serious collector / investor may be looking at instead of just saying, I want to put a Babe Ruth ball in my collection. This is one.
So this is the Grand Cadillac right here. That's very nice.
Yep, that's one of the nicer ones. I've only had it for about maybe a month and a half or something like that. So
very cool.
This one we won't talk as long about, but I at least wanted to show it.
It's okay.
This is an extremely famous photo of Ty Cobb sliding into third base with his spikes up. Now, I've had a lot of Ty Cobb autographs. Actually, if you go back, let's say 20 to 25 years ago, there was a pretty large find on Ty Cobb signed checks. So if somebody wants a Ty Cobb autograph, this is probably going back, I'd say, like 25 years. There might have been 1,000 or 2,000 checks that somebody found, either like an old accounting office or, somebody had these. And the autographs, it kind of drove the price down, although the memorabilia market 25 years ago wasn't anything like it is now.
Correct.
So he's not a rare autograph, but rare that it's signed on this actual photo. It's for him to be on a photo somewhat rare, but for this is a super famous photo of him signed in. So that makes it even more rare.
And for the people that don't know, because we have educated viewers and non-educated. So he's talking about this is an original photo. This is what he's talking about, first generation photo.
Right.
And what this to Adeline and Frank, it's an inscription. but he made it out to them. It still holds value because there's not many of the photos. While they found the checks and people might slab them, this encapsulation here by PSA is what we call it, slabbed. They would take the checks and then you could frame it with a Ty Cobb photo or any piece that you wanted. But in this situation, this photo is rare also.
Right. So again, rare for him to sign a photo. That would be even more valuable if it was non-inscribed, that also lends a little the provenance and authenticity as he inscribed it. Now I don't know who Adeline and Frank were, but he inscribed it to him. It's still a fairly bold,
and what would the retail be on?
Probably retail on something like this is between 13 and 18,000, somewhere in that range.
So if yours Adeline and Frank out there, you could get it. But if you're a Ty Cobb and you're looking for that, that's a pretty cool piece.
But this is the only I've done
the photo.
This is the only time I've seen this photo signed.
Now you've seen the photo.
I've seen the photo,
but not signed.
Not signed. So that makes that pretty rare.
Okay.
And I brought a little bit of something of local interest here. Hopefully Justin knows what this is.
I know what that is.
Okay.
Yeah, I know this is.
So this is not signed, not autographed, but it is a program from the March 1962 game, which a lot of even if you don't know anything about vintage basketball, a lot of people have heard of this game, especially in this area. This is when the Philadelphia Warriors played the Knicks at Hershey at the old arena, which is still there. They would do what they called barnstorming tours, and the Warriors, who are now Golden State Warriors, but they were before the Sixers. Chamberlain played for the Warriors, and they came on what they called a barnstorming, which you would pretty much never see today, or at least in this form. And they played the Knicks at the Hershey Arena because they were trying to promote the NBA, trying to promote pro basketball, so they went to other areas to do this. And getting to it, this is the 100-point game. So Chamberlain was the only pro basketball player to ever score 100 points in a game. Nobody's broken it. Kobe got close, but not really close. He was 81, I think, so he's still 19 off or something in that range.
So this piece here, that's a pretty good condition. It's graded here.
This is the only example that's graded. There's never been another one graded. We use a company, CGC, that has started grading programs in the last few years and magazines and different things like that. So have
you seen one of these before?
Yes, so I'd say
programs you've sold them.
I've seen the programs. I've actually bought and sold one before. One. This is the second one I've had. This actually came in locally, which is very unusual. The person that had the program was at the game. I think he was about 12 years old when he went to the game.
Wow, that's pretty cool. 1962, so it was more 1950.
There was probably around 5,000 people at the game. So nobody would know how many programs were produced, but it was probably 1,000 or less. How many have survived? Really hard to say because this stuff is not necessarily looked at as far as trading cards where you can say how many of these are graded, where you can get a population report. But my guess would be there's probably 10 to 15 known examples, meaning that have come up in the hobby or the business for sale over the last 20 years. That doesn't mean somebody doesn't have one. Obviously, this one we just obtained was in a guy's collection, and he was not a collector. He was just, I have the program.
Well, this would be appealing to a non-sports person that's also a historian, somebody that likes the history, a Hershey collector.
Oh, yeah.
This is huge for the Hershey
It's probably, I still tell
story.
people it's one of the more famous accomplishments in sports because you don't have to be a knowledgeable basketball fan to say, oh, yeah, Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points in a game. Now, not everybody can tell you where it was and when it was and different things like that, but this is the actual program from the game. The other thing that would even make it nicer if the guy would have had the ticket stub, and those are even probably a little more valuable than the program. But these programs especially really spiked in value during the pandemic. It's probably come off that price since there a little bit, but there's examples of these that were not graded in a lesser condition that sold for well over $50,000.
So what's the retail on this one? Right around there?
I mean, I would say between 55 to 80,000. Okay. Again, if you go online to look for one, like we actually don't have this online right now, but if you went online to look for one, you're not going to find one. So when you get to stuff like that, the price is a lot more subjective than just saying, well, this is what it sells for. You know,
right.
A lot of
you can't find a comparison.
So and this is, like I said, the only one that's been graded, and it's got a which is 5.5, does not sound like high, but for a publication and vintage, it's actually
From 1962.
pretty high grade. Yep.
That's been probably opened or looked at.
And again, not
in
no
a personal
autographs,
collection.
not signed, nothing. It's just the actual program.
Yep.
So if anybody has one sitting around, or their granddad has one, or that's kind of a local.
What
thing.
Darren's saying is, if you have one in Central PA, reach out to him. He'd like to buy it.
Right. So the last item I brought is veering off the sports, is going into entertainment a little bit. And this we've had for just a few months. I've not really put it up for sale yet, but this is an original photo from 1965, signed by all 4 members of the Beatles. And this is when they're filming the movie Help, and I believe it was in the Bahamas. And you can tell they're on a beach, but they're wearing, looks like an Eddie Bauer collection, but they're wearing just regular clothes there. But it's signed by all 4, and what makes it unique is, number 1, obviously it's signed by all 4. Number 2, it's signed on a photo. But number 3, the really big thing is how bold the autographs are. And this was signed in a flare pen, so there was no really such thing as Sharpies back then. But probably best case scenario, it was signed in this marker, which still it's got a little bit of wear to it. Somebody probably had it hanging up in an office or room or something. But
A little bit of bleeding. But
but I mean, as far as like the strength of the autographs, that's the real key, and the fact that it's on a photo and it's signed by all 4, that's a really big deal. Because if you
he has it graded authentic, but also graded the autograph.
Right.
Which for that age and the pen and the photo, which the ink and all that over time, near meant 7.
Yeah.
Probably very high grade.
Yeah,
for that.
and the most important thing about all this stuff we're talking about today is the authenticity of the item. That's super important to the value. So there's really 2 to 3 companies, 2 main ones, probably even a third one, I would say. PSA DNA, JSA, James Spence Authentication, and Beckett Authentication. Those are the 3 leading, what you would call a third-party authenticator that looks at this, evaluates it, looks at their exemplars, and assigns if it's authentic or not, which makes a humongous deal. Because if this
third-party authentication, for people who don't know, is a company. We call it third-party because it's not owned by him or somebody that works for him or his company. It's him acquiring the item and sending it or having them come in. They grade it independently, and they basically say they deem it authentic, and that completely changes the value of it.
Which the most important thing you said is independently. The companies that grade and authenticate these items are not don't have any ownership in my company, don't have any ownership in memorabilia companies.
That's what they do.
They grade and authenticate, and that's their business. So the one with the Will Chamberlain is the company is called CGC, which actually just acquired James Spence Authentication, but they're based out of Florida, and they do a lot of, they do obviously sports, but they also are very large in comic book, Pokemon cards,
correct,
gaming cards. They're huge in that. So that
company, and they do stuff that's non-autographed.
Right. So yeah, this is a non-autograph that they just assigned a grade on the condition of the program, where some of the autograph companies will authenticate, but then they also, if it's a strong enough piece, they'll authenticate it and assign a grade to it, which, like the Babe Ruth ball is graded a 7.
Yeah.
I don't have the paperwork here, but so that's a 7 on a scale of 10. So,
well, very cool. Thank you for bringing these items and showing them to us and letting us hold them. I got to hold a couple things I haven't ever held or seen. So what we're going to do now is as we start to wrap up, it's the fastest minute for a cause. Everybody knows that's what we do here on the podcast. We're going to ask you really quickly for 1 minute these questions. They're mostly yes or no or real quick answers. If you can get through all the questions in 1 minute, which we pretty much made them pretty easy, we're going to donate $100 to Easter Seals. So Beyond the Game, one of the things that we do is we partner with about 5 nonprofits that we do a lot of work with, monetarily donating money, but also through volunteerism. Easter Seals is one of the closest organizations that we work with. If you don't know, Easter Seals of Central PA. They work with special needs children, helping them have camps and have experiences and do things, and assisting with their primary caregivers. They've also, in the last few years, expanded, and they work with veteran kids, kids that parents have PTSD from being in the military. So here in Central PA alone, they have like 600 to 800 participants on both sides of the business. We've worked with Easter Seals for many years with my football team and with my company Dazzle Sports also. So let's go ahead. We want to make a donation from Beyond the Game and from Best Authentics in your name. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. We got a minute set on the clock, and there we go. So are you a football or baseball guy?
I would say baseball.
Baseball. I think I know the answer to this one. Texas or Oklahoma?
University of Texas.
He wanted to be clear, so you're a hook 'em. A beach or mountains?
Probably beach.
Beach,
Yeah,
okay.
Especially after this week with the weather.
Yeah. Mets or Yankees?
I would say neither, but if I had to go with one, I would say Yankees.
You had to go with one.
Yeah. I had to go with one.
You had to go with one. You're an Astros fan, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Okay. Last and final question. Greatest player in his prime, Jordan or LeBron?
I'm going with Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. Well, there you go. You have it. $100 going to Easter Seals and Beyond the Game and Best Authentics and Darren in their name. Thank you very much for playing along with us. We appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you want to let them know? The website again?
Yeah, just if anybody's looking for, again, like you mentioned, the charity event angle, if anybody's looking for risk-free fundraising for their nonprofit or their group, get in contact with us, and you can find all the information on bestauthentics.com.
There you go. Appreciate it, guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.